Good morning. There is no greater joy than to have been saved by God when you knew that all hope was gone. He seemed to have it all. He was 8 years old, and at 8, he made it and got invited to the World Junior Golf Championship at Torrey Pines, California. He was at a prestigious local private school and was bringing home only A's. And then at 13, tragedy struck. The trauma was so intense and so overwhelming that even going to school was not possible. The thought of now going to college, just wishful thinking. The doctors were useless, and in my mind, they had just prolonged the recovery. But if it wasn't for the heart-wrenching prayers of her mother, of his church family, of those his mother could even think of that loved Jesus, to pray for her son, all would have been ended in tragedy. But at 16, he started going back to school, mostly regularly, and then somehow he got onto the high school golf team. And then almost impossibly, he was able to qualify for the OIA High School Golf Championship Tournament over at Turtle Bay. His parents held their breath because they knew that the stressor of the tournament could easily break him again. But they allowed him to participate. Well, the first day of the 2-day tournament went very well. It was much better than they could have expected. But the second day, his game collapsed. He shot his worst score ever in his whole high school career. And even on the last hole, he put 3 balls into the water. And so his parents were waiting as he got off the 18th green and walked over to the scorer's tent to turn in his scorecard. And they waited until he came out, and when he came out, he had this smile as big as the world. He says, "Mom, I finished. I finished." And she just smiled and hugged him and drove him back home. As soon as he got out of the car, he headed to his bedroom to get on the internet. And he was yelling out from his bedroom, "Mom, Mom, Christian did better than he did yesterday. Bohem has made it to the top 10, and Brad is doing good. They all did really well, Mom. And Mom, guess what? I'm in 93rd. I was 93rd out of 94. I'm still in the top 100. Yeah, Mom." And he was laughing. And his mother in the kitchen was crying. For God had gave her son back. 2 weeks ago, at my nephew's graduation, at his graduation party, really, yes, and that was my nephew, he closed thanking everyone for what they had done for him, especially his parents. And with a long pause, he said, "I thank God because of him, I made it through. And by the way, I'm going to UH in the fall." And that'd be nice That's really nice. But that's not the end of the story. Because this week, we got a note, a thank you note, in which he said, thank you to all of us that had donated to his graduation party, giving him his graduation gifts. But he decided to donate a large portion of his graduation money to his high school's special education department. Because he told his mom, they loved me when nobody else did. That's joy. Joy cannot be contained. If it's true joy, it has to be shared. Joy, the happy state that results from knowing and serving God, the fruit of a right relationship with God. And then on the other hand, there's a joy that comes when we have understood how far we have fallen. It's a neat story in Nehemiah chapter 8. It describes an awesome experience when the people were called. It says in Zephaniah 3:20 that really it was God that was moving these people to go and rebuild. And God embedded that vision, that dream to Nehemiah. And Nehemiah, with Ezra the prophet, helped with the people to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, the walls of the temple. And after that, Ezra read the first 5 books, the Torah. And the people began to just weep because they realized where they had come from, how far they had fallen from their God. And it just struck them. They were in deep, deep sorrow and repentance. And instead, guess what Nehemiah does? He says to them, go celebrate. It says, go celebrate with feast of rich food and drink and gifts. And this is a sacred day. Don't be dejected and sad, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. And so the people went away, eating and drinking and sharing with great joy because they understood the words of God. They understood the depth from which they had fallen. And in Luke chapter 15, we're all familiar with the story of the prodigal son. But can you imagine? I want to take us to the party, and we know the prodigal son got the ring, got the robe. But can you imagine at the party for the prodigal son? He's sitting at the head table in a probably a big tent. Or in the house, but I'm thinking it's a big tent, and there the dad who had welcomed him home was just laughing and just having fun and patting his friends around the back and passing around pupus of poke, of opihi and ahi and sashimi, and he is just laughing with everybody, and you can imagine the prodigal son sitting at the head table and the emotions that must have gone through him. On one hand, the mixed feeling of feeling kind of guilty because he had so deeply hurt his father. But yet, on the other hand, an incredible sense of joy. Because now he was making his dad happy. And the deep, deep joy. So the story of the prodigal son is also for us who understand God's deep love for us that allows us to have the joy